Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, for Nerds by Nerds, and today I'm hanging out with Christopher and Ralph from Nord Games.
Hello.
They, uh, they're officially Nerdarchy, for Nerds by Nerds, and today I'm hanging out with
Oh,
Christopher
we're
and
we're
Ralph
bringing
from
up
Nord
somewhere.
Games. Missed it. Oh well. And they are officially sponsors of Nerdarchy, which we greatly appreciate. And today we're going to be talking about what else but D&D, and you guys also have a Kickstarter that's going to be wrapping up in the next 6 days or so.
Yeah, Tuesday, October 3rd, Artifices of Corstal Tower ends at 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So get involved before it's too late. It's a $10 softcover, $5 PDF, or $13 combo of the softcover and the PDF. So right now, right now we are at about 7,500 in funding. We wanted about $4,000 to cover all the costs, and so we've blown that out of the water
at this point.
Thoroughly kicked, yeah. And with 6 days left, usually you see quite a big spike in the end. So we might make our final stretch goal at $10,000. I'm not going to call it yet. We're definitely going to make the $8,000 stretch goal, but we may make the $10,000 stretch goal, which would be amazing. So yeah, I'm looking at the stats right now. 7,577 as of 9 o'clock this morning. Today's the 27th of September, and we have 560 backers. So this is a winner.
Kirkish001, this chat is going to be dangerous for a while. It's everywhere. I just know it. I love Nord Game stuff. So you got a fan for sure in the chat.
Thanks very much. We love our fans. Yeah, we love our fans, and we're fans of our fans.
So what are the stretch goals, since you brought them up?
So we had 3 stretch goals. So our initial funding goal was at $4,000. We've done that. First stretch goal was at $6,000, the pre-generated characters, and that was a free thing. We're going to add on to the rewards. All rewards get that, and the idea there is you'd have some pre-generated characters that would work with the story right out of the box, as in they've got some connection to the story or NPCs within the story. There's motivations built into their characters. This is a great way to just jumpstart a session, especially at conventions, or let's say that you run a game at the local game store and you're getting a bunch of people who are, let's say, unknown. They don't really play together normally, and they don't already have an existing campaign. So this is a great stretch goal for all that. And then at 8,000, we're throwing in all the maps for free, all the digital maps. So we're taking all the maps out of the book and giving them to you with grids and no grids, all the different resolutions for your virtual tabletop, or you can take them and get them printed out for personal use. And there you go. You've got the maps to use with your game. And then the $10,000 stretch goal was actually added pages to the book, which was at the end of the book, at the end of all the appendices and stuff. We were going to add the artwork concepts, as in we were going to show the progression of each piece of artwork that we did for the book, with notes from Ralph, and basically a refined sketch, and then a color version, just to show you how the artwork process works.
So when you guys, when Nord Games is designing adventures, what is your goal? Do you have do you have a set strategy in mind? Like, this is how we make our adventures, this is how we're going to make all of our adventures, or is it going to be different with each one?
Well, Ralph and I have discussed connecting all of these various adventures together in one way or another, trying to have some sort of theme behind them so that all the variable difficulty adventures could be used in a single campaign, potentially in chronological order, if you wanted to. But Ralph, your thoughts on that topic?
Well, I think essentially we don't really have a set idea of how they're going to work. They're kind of semi-improvised. They grow from a core idea, and then that core idea is written about in detail, and then we'll have a look at it. Okay, what could make this more interesting? What could add to this? Where could this go? And then it just sort of grows out and out and out, rather than setting off to write a finished product from the get-go. It's just sort of layers of ideas being added, really, which is how Quartz Tall Tower grew to what it is.
I know you guys definitely have the design philosophy of going, this is going to be a multi-tier adventure where you write it so you want it to be versatile, so you can run through, an array, if you will, of levels and experience.
Yeah, well, the variable difficulty adventure, the concept is very simple. Give different challenges based on the level of the party. And the beginning of the book outlines, if your party is this level to this level, use these stats. If they're this level to this level, use these stats. And that's all built in right in the book, so that no matter what, you can always use the adventure. And but the overall concept and writing process, it's very much, you come up with an idea and then we collaborate with each other to build it out bigger and bigger. And we say, hey, what about this? What if you introduce this? And some stuff ends up on the cutting room floor, so to speak. It just doesn't end up in the adventure because it didn't really work. But when we collaborate with each other, we end up with so many more ideas going on. And in the case of Quartz Tall Tower, Noah presented us with a great manuscript, but it just needed a little bit of extra this and that. So Ralph and I worked with Noah to just come up with new ideas and go, well, what if you threw in this? What if you threw in that? And we just throw a bunch of stuff against the wall and see what sticks. And really, it turns into a much richer adventure when you add other people's ideas into it.
Well, I find almost everything in our hobby is like that anyway. The more ideas we have bouncing around, it usually improves things.
Yeah. The more, I hate to say it, the more good ideas. Sometimes there are bad ideas. We come up with bad ideas all the time, but they very rarely ever get very far. Sometimes it's a bad idea and you don't realize it. It's like a stealthy bad idea until you get to a certain point in the writing process and you go, why is this so difficult right now? Oh, because this one part is being difficult. Let's just get rid of it. And the really nice thing
you have in the room, the less chance those bad ideas have of surviving.
Yeah, because all in all, we're pretty comfortable with each other and saying, hey, this really isn't working at this point in time. We never say, oh, your idea sucks.
I remember at least one occasion of I can't even remember what the idea was, but your response was, no, really, Ralph, tell me what you really think.
Yeah. Well, it was some sort of idea, and Ralph was like, no, that's terrible. But most of the time, we can tell what's a bad idea and what's not. But then sometimes it's only a bad idea because it doesn't work within that story. That can sometimes be shelved and say, oh, we'll bring that up in another story. That might work better somewhere else. But the beautiful thing about it is it's not difficult to just cut that paragraph out of this story and put it into a Word document of ideas. Just get it out of there. And sometimes you find that the story just flows so much better when you remove that one weird sticking point where it was a great idea 3 weeks ago, but as you develop the rest of the story, it's no longer a good idea.
Well, that's kind of the great thing about working digitally too, is when things that hit the cutting floor don't actually have to stay on the cutting floor. It's really easy to just move them around and be like, oh, this may be a terrible idea here, but over there at some point we can use this as a seed and something will come out of this. There is a question for you guys from Jay Hansen in the chat. I'm a fan of your Ultimate Beastry. Will there be more for creatures like Drow, Dugar, and Giants?
Well, the next book in the bestiary lineup is The Dreaded Accursed, and that is all ghouls, zombies, vampires, liches, this kind of thing. And obviously, those are all covered in the monster manual from 5th edition. But as you know, we go way beyond with it. We give you way more options to choose from. So that's actually the one that we're working on currently. But as far as expanding further into some of those, classic monsters, It's definitely going to be done at some point in time. We just have each one of our books themed a certain way. And so it's sort of like there might have to be one of those books that's just the misfits, the ones that they are their own things, but they don't really work all as a group together. So when you have Revenge of the Horde,
it's the other monstrous humanoids, really. It's the lizard folk, it's the drow, it's the Duergar, it's...
I totally disagree. Drow, Dugar, you can come up with a Kotoa. You can come up with quite a few other ones, and they would just be Underdark.
True.
That could be, yeah. So we do have one that's all subterranean monsters, so it definitely could fit in there. But as we're going through all these different monster types and stuff, we are finding that there will be a book at some point of the misfits. It's just going to be a large number of ones that just don't work together. But as far as, I mean, I don't want to give away too much here, but like I said, we've got Revenge of the Horde, which is themed to those, you know, typical orcs and hobgoblins and gnolls and trolls and stuff. And then we've got the Dreaded Accursed, which is going to go through all the accursed type creatures. And then beyond that, you know, we've got ideas for elementals and underground subterranean creatures and that kind of thing. So each book is themed, and that's why we have to figure out where those guys slot in. So don't worry, you're going to see from the entire lineup of the books we've got, you're going to see all of those various monsters represented, plus new ones that have never been done before. So, and modifications on the ones that have. The idea is have plenty of stat blocks to choose from, plenty of challenge ratings to choose from, and you can always find something to challenge your players. Because with the Dreaded Curse, one thing that we're finding is many of the undead creatures are either very, very high, like liches are very challenging, or zombies are very easy. You know, there's not a lot of options. There's ghosts and banshees and that kind of thing, a challenge rating 4 and that kind of thing. But there's not a lot of options in that mid-range, level 10s, level 12s, that kind of thing. So our idea is present you with zombies that could be a higher level than I think they're 1/4 or 1/2 or something. Present you with skeletons that are a higher challenge rating, and they're simply higher challenge rating because they have more hit points, more armor, they can wield bigger weapons, that kind of thing. I mean, it's a no-brainer. We're going after those books that have huge variety in their challenge rating, but they're themed very specifically.
So how many of those those do you have not planned out, but
titles for?
Yeah.
Let me look at the number.
6 or 7 in there, aren't there?
Yeah.
But most of them are just titles.
Well, that's how it all starts, though, right? You just a working title, and then
9.
Oh, nice.
There are 9. So, yeah, and the one for the underground creatures is called Out of the Depths. So let's see. Yeah, we've got I'll just give you that tidbit. So that might be the 3rd one that we do after the Dreaded Accursed.
Oh, nice.
So,
but that artwork takes a while to get together.
That's one of the biggest things is the artwork and obviously the stat blocks and coming up with new concepts and what makes these things different. Why should someone buy this book as opposed to the standard monster manual or Tome of Beasts or whatever? You know, obviously you should buy them all in my opinion, but we don't want to put out a book that doesn't have value. That's one of our main goals is, I mean, probably number 1 goal actually, is to always put out a product that has value. If it doesn't have value and you shouldn't buy it, I don't want you to buy it. You know, I don't want anybody to buy our stuff for the sake of buying it. I want them to buy it because they're going to be using it. So, yeah, great question. And 9 books in the works as far as currently. But we're taking them one at a time. So currently we're working on the Dreaded Accursed, and we offer this to everybody, anybody who's watching right now. If you have ideas on manuscripts or monsters, or you want to collaborate with us in any way, you feel free to do that. You can contact us through our website, Facebook page, all that kind of stuff. And we're definitely taking on more and more writers right now, and very excited by what they're coming up with, because we can't write it all. And so we're trying to reach out to other people, other creative people, and collaborate.
Excellent. I wasn't expecting to get all that information out of you guys.
Yeah, well, we know that we've announced the Dreaded Accursed a couple of times. We've mentioned it a couple of times. So, and that's in the works right now, probably a mid 2018 release. We're trying to, we're trying to speed up our process right now, and that's one of the reasons we're looking at bringing on more writers and running more Kickstarters.
So scaling up. I guess the art is like the trickiest part too, like getting the art assets, and the most expensive part.
Well, yeah, Ralph, you're all over that question.
Yeah, well, you can't rush it, basically. If you want it to be good, it has to take a certain amount of time. And yeah, and also you need to have the majority of it done before you do a Kickstarter, because you want to have stuff to show off. You want to be able to show people this is what the thing is going to look like. And such a big part of that is having the artwork finished. Yeah, it's quite a time-consuming process.
So, Ralph, are you the one that's in charge of sourcing all the art?
Yeah, I do the art direction on all of our stuff. So I've just got folders and folders of reference images and sort of constant email contact with our artists. It's a good job. I like it a lot.
Well, that's what I was thinking. That's more of a fun job. You get to see all the cool stuff coming in first.
Yeah, well, that's why we're excited about, potentially hitting this final stretch goal on Quartz Toil, is that we have always had a really good response whenever we've shown people the artwork process, whenever we've shown the progression of sketch to refined sketch to rough color to color. People have always really liked seeing that stuff. That stuff in one of the books would be, quite a nice little addition, I think.
I have to agree. I know you guys had did a live chat, and Nate had jumped on, and that was one of the things he really enjoys saying was, how it gets to the end result.
Yeah, unfortunately, there aren't any in Quartz Toil which have one of my MS Paint first drafts, where there's a bit of composition or whatever that's sort of particularly complicated, but I've got the idea in my mind, but I can't find anything that specifically, is all of the things that I need, so I just doodle something in Paint. There's one of those for Revenge of the Horde, actually. Takashi put a GIF or GIF, I'm going to say GIF, together of just doing each of the stages, and just the comparison between the final product and my stick figures was quite good.
Nice. So how big of a stable of artists do you guys pull from?
At the moment, we're working with 3. We've got Takashi, who does the character pieces for Ultimate NPCs and Ultimate Bestiary, so he did all of the monsters in Ultimate Bestiary. We've got Conrad, who did the environment pieces in Revenge of the Horde, and is doing the artwork for Quartz Toil. And Evgeny, who did the Wandering Monsters artwork and the treasure decks as well. So yeah, we've got Chris in the States, we've got me in England, Conrad in Germany, Takashi in Malaysia, and Evgeny in Russia. So we are all over the place. There's going to be someone working on something. Nice.
We're international, and we still get more and more artists submitting their portfolios. And I have to say, you have an incredible portfolio, but I'm sorry, we don't currently have anything available, because literally we have a huge variety of artists to pull from when we need to. So, but hey, anybody who's an artist out there, or cartographer, or what have you, feel free to continue to submit your stuff. Sometimes what we find is a certain style works really well for what we're trying to do with this book, but not, this artist doesn't really work for that book. So definitely keep on submitting those, and we just keep them in a folder and, come back to them and say, okay, we have this project coming up. Who would work really well for this project? And we've got options there. I'm sorry if you can hear the crying in the background. This is my level 1 barbarian. He's very upset about something. I don't know, but I keep on muting my mic just to save everybody. So I'm going to remute it.
No worries. I would offer Olga Dubois, her name into the hat. She's in Russia, and she does some really awesome work. She did our Saver Dice character portraits. So I don't know if you've seen them going around on Facebook or not, but she does an excellent job. So we got 6 days left on your Kickstarter. When is the expected delivery date?
Sorry, I've still got a raging barbarian in the background here. I believe we've got it set for March 2018. Oh my goodness, there must be something very, very wrong. So yeah, March 2018, and Ralph, you take it from here.
Are we teething?
Answered the question.
That's all right. I've had kids, but I'm way past those stages. Now we have to deal with teenager temper tantrums, which are way different. So the suggestion from the chat is cast calm emotions.
That's a good idea. Here,
give the barbarian something to kill, like a pacifier.
He doesn't take the pacifier anymore. It's very interesting. He pretty much quit cold turkey at like 6 months old.
Oh yeah.
He doesn't
suck his thumb. Pacified, father.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Let's find calm emotions.
Banshee random encounter. There we go. Halfling barbarians, not to be underestimated.
This kid, so he's 15 months old, and he is the size of your average 2.5-year-old right now.
Is he teething?
Not too bad, but sometimes he's just like, he wants something, and he just, because he can't get it, he just
freaks out.
But you've been through that a couple times.
Yeah. Red Jackal, remember where the headbutts land.
Yeah, exactly. This kid he'll just come up and just, it's like, dude, ow.
At a certain age, like range, they're like heat-seeking missiles for your nads.
Yeah, pretty much. And one thing that when I was a kid, never meant to, obviously, but I'd run up to my dad and I would step on his toes. And we're from Santa Cruz. He'd be wearing flip-flops, and so he wouldn't have anything to protect his toes, and I would just be stomping on him, not knowing. I'm just a kid, didn't realize it. But yeah, calm emotions. Let's see if we can cast that spell. Each humanoid in a 20-foot radius sphere. So on a point you choose. I'll choose way over there, beyond the door. Yeah, good suggestion though. So yeah, but anyway, so I just took a look at that artist stuff. Yeah, I remember the Saver Dice artwork, your half work and whatnot, and yeah, that looks fantastic. So we could definitely throw her portfolio into the saved folder, and
yeah, I pin her whenever I can now. She did such a great job for us, and it was so cool the way she was able to basically take our portraits and just like transfix the characters over top of them.
Yeah, we've done that so far for the Ultimate NPC's Skullduggery. And for those of you who are curious and maybe have the book, look at I think it's the Bandit Captain is me, and Lou and Ralph are the spies.
Assassins.
Assassins. And they looked great. I mean, the artwork turned out so good, and it's very, you get this little feeling when you see your face on some badass warrior or whatever, whatever was created, because that's me. It looks like me. And I've done art classes before in college and stuff, and I've drawn myself, done self-portraits and stuff, and that's always interesting to see. But then when someone else's interpretation of what you look like, it's different. It's neat. It's a unique experience. I think not everybody gets to have an artist do a portrait of themselves, and definitely not a portrait where you're integrated into something different and and fantasy themed.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of break Pruitt and Cody's stones, because I'm like, all she did is draw you guys. That's it. But even to say it, like literally, like their portraits look just like them. It's uncanny.
What do you mean, the assassin pieces?
No. In our game, because they're playing.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm looking at them right now. Yeah, they look just like them, except the only ones that look different are the lizard folk character and the half orc. But
she influenced my character, because I would, when she drew the spectacles on there, she's like, I couldn't resist. I'll take them off if you want. But I was like, oh no, they must stay now.
Mm-hmm.
And then the GM gave us a magic item, so I'm like, yeah, I need Eyes of the Eagle.
Nice. Yeah, I think that so much of where our minds go while we're playing is based on the artwork, and that's why, to Ralph's point, it's so important to have that artwork polished and looking good, and that just takes time. In the chat, Jay Kawhi, which always butchers his name, he'll phonetically spell it for me, but I'll probably still get it wrong. Or a mugshot, or when the police do a portrait of you, it's way different. Yeah, I never had that happen, but yeah, it is very unique to have yourself drawn into one of these adventures. And we're right now working on the artwork for Ultimate NPCs Warfare, and we've had the discussion, where are we going to be? Where should we put ourselves this time around? And I don't know. I don't know where to pick. We've got so many different places. Obviously, the heroes, we're making the heroes from scratch. We don't want to use ourselves for anything, but the generic NPCs, we should be in there somewhere. And should we be part of the knights, or part of the militia? Where should we be? So we're still trying to work that out. But I hope we end up, maybe all three of us end up in the same piece. That would be fun too.
It ends up being like a Where's Waldo of D&D.
Well, and part of me wants to do things like not tell anybody where we're going to be, and the first person who can tell me where I am, like what page I'm on, we give a $50 store credit to, or something like that, something fun, so everyone's getting their book and like going through it as quickly as possible, or they're going through the PDF as quickly as possible to try to find where we're located, where our cameo is.
Yeah, that's a cool idea. I like that.
Yeah, just some sort of hunt. People like hunts. Our Kickstarter has actually gone up a little bit since we started this.
Oh, cool.
Interview. Yeah, we're up to 7,590. So I think it jumped up by one backer, which is nice. Right now, we're still sort of in the doldrums. Usually, we find that it's the last 5 days of the campaign is when things really start to pick up, and then especially in the last 48 hours, because there's a notification that goes out to anybody who clicked on the Remind Me button, and so that'll be going out at 9 o'clock on Sunday evening Pacific Standard Time. And so, typically we find Monday and Tuesday just huge numbers for these sorts of projects.
You guys have done a bunch of Kickstarters now, right? 11.
11. We have done 11 Kickstarters, and the only one that did not fund was the one that we had canceled. That's the print-on-demand cartography. And I can't say information about that because we sort of hand it off to Drive Through RPG. So they're going to have to answer any questions about progress on that. But I hope that they do end up offering that service, because print-on-demand maps would be a fantastic service for the industry. And I would use it all the time. I would be printing out maps constantly. instead of
Well,
paying huge
wallpaper
prices
your
for.
house and maps.
Well, I just find that having the actual map to put the real miniatures on is great. I have a ChessX grid that I use and I draw on it, but having the actual map for the adventure, far superior. And that's just the way it is. So I hope that they offer that service, because I'll be using it weekly and making pretty large orders. But yeah. So yeah, this is the 11th project, and we have no shortage of more projects to come. Kickstarter has been a very good platform for us, and this pretty much proves our theory that the Heroes of High Fantasy variable difficulty adventure modules is a success. And it's something that we've had requests for from retailers. It's something that we've wanted to put out for a long time, and this is definitely showing us. We did a couple last year for Dungeon Crate exclusively, but now that we're doing this for everybody, it was an unknown. Is it going to be successful or not? It looks like it's going to be very successful. So that answers our question.
Well, I mean, that is the great part about Kickstarter. You kind of get to figure out what people really want. They let you know.
Yeah, it's a proving ground for sure. It definitely proves the concept. You can fund your production run. You can get things going. We've already invested a lot of time, effort, energy, and money, for artwork and stuff into each one of these projects before they actually go to Kickstarter. So there is sometimes hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars invested before we ever go to Kickstarter. And it's nice to get that initial money back and be able to fund the production of something. So that's pretty much where we set our goals. But the overall power of Kickstarter is to prove that this is an interesting project, or a product that has interest from the community. So if it doesn't, that's totally fine. You've basically had a couple $100 or a couple $1,000 education that this is not a thing that people are going to be interested in. But if it is a success, then it shows you and other companies this is something that has value, and people are interested in it.
So, are there any areas you guys want to move into that? I know you were telling me some secret stuff, but not aside from that, like conceptually, are there any ideas, any areas you want to move in for products, for different books?
Well, I think if you break it down, and we have the Game Master's Toolbox, which includes the Ultimate NPCs, the Ultimate Bestiary. We have some other player-centric stuff coming out that's still within that realm. It may not be within the Game Master's Toolbox, maybe the Player's Toolbox, or some other title. But with those more rules and content-based things, we're doing really well with those product lines. With the adventure side, where our brand is Heroes of High Fantasy, and we're starting with the variable difficulty ones, we may have entire campaigns, thick book campaigns where everything's included. It's the setting, it's the adventure, all that kind of stuff, like the Curse of Strahd, or other titles that are out there, where everything's, and as well as the variable difficulty stuff. But we're also talking about the adventure path method of things. The only sticking point with the adventure path is we will need to generate the content on a regular basis in order for that to be a viable option. So writing the overall adventure, so you know where you're going. So it's not just every week. It's like, we don't know where we're going, but last time we did this, so this time we're going to do this, and we're just continuing on this adventure. In my mind, I'm thinking that these would be either a monthly or a bi-weekly release, potentially just on PDF to begin with, and later on put them all into one hardcover book, but as one continuous adventure. But we need to be able to generate that content that quickly. And with Ralph and myself and other people involved who are all we've got other things going on, it doesn't seem like that is going to be an option unless we have writers who are specifically doing that portion of it. And then based on the stories that they're coming up with, Ralph handles the artwork, and we have just a few pieces of artwork that go into each one of those adventures. So, and you have to think of it in terms of the cost. So how many pieces of artwork will be in there? How expensive will that be? Are we going to sell it as just a PDF, or are we going to go full production with it and sell it as a soft cover? Do we have to Kickstarter every single one of those? It doesn't, there's a lot of logistics involved. So I would say on the adventure side, you've got the variable difficulty stuff, you've got the adventure path stuff, and then you've got the all-inclusive hardcover book of one continuous adventure. And those are all within the Heroes of High Fantasy brand. We're starting out with what we can do, and we may expand into those things later on. And when we have the people, the manpower, really, people power.
Makes all the difference. So do you guys have any ideas for player options, or you haven't gotten into that yet? I feel like player options are the hardest because they're the ones you have to get right more so than any other kind of product.
Player options, it's all about balance. It's all about, because people will come to my game with, oh, I got this homebrew thing that it looks neat. And I go, okay, let me have a look at it. And then you realize, oh, this is broken as hell. This is just something someone made up and they like it. So that's not really going to work for our game. I'm sorry. We're going to use only what's available in the official WotC material, Player's Handbook and Volo's Guide. So you could play one of the races from Volo's Guide, or obviously if they want to play a monstrous race, they could play something out of the Ultimate Bestiary Revenge of the Horde, because we've done our homework, we've done all the research in order to make sure that that stuff's balanced. When it comes to the homebrew stuff, it's not really, sometimes it can be way out there. So if we were to produce any more player options like that, we would be very careful about the balance of it. But even the official stuff, we've had revisions like in the Unearthed Arcana for things like the Ranger and whatnot. So, it's always a moving target, it seems.
Absolutely, it absolutely can be. Although, like with the Ranger, like I'm actually okay with the Ranger as it is. The Beastmaster option needed a little bit of work, but the Hunter option, like in the games I've played in, the Hunter Ranger, out damages most of the other classes. So,
well, with Horde Breaker and all kinds of other things, we've never had an issue where the Ranger needed a buff. In fact, it was always pretty amazing when Brad was our player who usually played the Ranger. He would just run in there and just decimate whatever is going on, and we're like, wow, that was pretty badass. Usually with Horde Breaker, but other people played Rangers, with the Giant Slayer and stuff, adding massive amounts of damage to their rolls. That can definitely change the fight. So I didn't think that the Ranger needed any tweaks either, but obviously the community did. And so the Unearthed Arcana Ranger Revised, I think was what it was called, came out, and that's totally fine. I would consider anything from WotC to be totally usable. And but that's, like I said, that's the thing. You have to make sure that your stuff is balanced and not necessarily approved or sanctioned by WotC, but definitely you got to do your homework and make sure that what you're putting out is going to work with the rules that are already out there.
Yeah, because if we had really messed something up in Revenge of the Horde, one of the monsters was just plain broken, the DM can lie. The players can't lie. So, the DM can say, oh, okay, well, this is completely broken, so I'm just going to ignore this little feature here. Whereas the players are rolling their dice out in the open.
Well, and to that point, as far as on the monsters, I fudge numbers all the time to tell a good story rather than to destroy the players and that kind of thing. So if I'm using a certain monster and it becomes apparent to me halfway through the battle that the dice rolls have not been good to these players, and there's definitely some bad luck going on, I will sometimes ignore a certain trait or whatever on a monster. That's your right as the dungeon master to make those changes on the fly in order to have a good experience for you and the players, instead of just making every single session a TPK.
DMs roll dice for the sound they make.
Sometimes, yeah, I'll just roll them behind the screen and I'll go, ooh, and, I rolled a couple D20s, and I ignore whatever they say, just because I believe your role as the dungeon master is to tell a good story and provide a good experience, even if that means that some players die or all the players die. If they die in some sort of heroic way, great, but I'm more interested in progressing the story. And so when it comes to monsters, if something needs to be ignored or some other thing needs to be added, like it has some weakness that is not listed, but you want to make sure, like all my undead creatures are always weak to radiant damage. And some people argue with that. They say, well, they're resistant to everything else and therefore weak to radiant, but it doesn't actually say that they're weak to radiant. So I say, yeah, that they take more damage from radiant damage because they're undead creatures, and that gives you a reason to bring the cleric with you. That brings you a reason, or gives you a reason to bring the paladin with you. And I think that just makes those classes even more important when you're dealing with undead creatures or accursed creatures.
So I want to jump into the chat for the roll call. Guys, if you want to sound off where you're from, I roll all my dice into open and I go with the Drago method. If they die, they die. But that being said, like, to me, that's an unimaginative GM for the most part. If the only result can be die, like, especially in a system like 5e where damage doesn't have to necessarily automatically be lethal, just because they go unconscious.
Yeah, I've always found that if I have a really strong idea in my head of, oh, okay, well, these guys aren't fighting to kill them, there is a very clear path of what happens when they're beaten in the fight, I am a lot more merciless with how the dice go, because it's not the case. I don't want, as Chris was saying, I feel like it's a bad story if the players roll really poorly, so the adventurers go into the dungeon, none of them hit everything, and just through sheer chance, they're killed by goblins. That's not a good story to me.
No.
Whereas, if I've got in my head, these goblins are taking prisoners to fight in their fighting pits, they want the people alive, so they're just knocking them out. I'm like, oh, okay, you're hit, down to 0 hit points. No, shame.
See, I like the idea of letting them think they died, and then they're like, oh, well, you wake up and there's a goblin chef in front of a giant pot cutting up vegetables, and you're tied to stakes or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Now you have a whole different set of requirements. Now I need to get myself out of these bindings. I need to knock out the chef, and I need to somehow escape this place. So it can definitely, if you're creative enough, you can definitely shift the adventure from what was a hack and slash to now a sneak, get out of there alive sort of situation. But that's where I've completely misjudged how difficult this monster was going to be to fight, and they've killed it before it could take a turn. Yes.
So
I've had that before.
That'd be, okay, that didn't go as planned. So okay, 3. It's technically dead, but let's just think 3 more hits, whatever that damage is going to kill it. They don't need to know how many hit points it had.
And sometimes it's sheer luck that happens. But one of my earliest adventures, when I was still running games in 2nd edition, I had been dungeon mastering for less than 6 months at this point. My brother and I are playing, and most of the time it was just the two of us. I would be telling the story, and I'd be running some, maybe 2 or 3 characters. He'd be running 2 or 3 characters, and we'd be just having fun. Teenagers just having fun. And I created this whole thing with this necromancer was raising skeletons and stuff, and I told him the whole story, and they were in this cavern, and he raises his hand, and all the skeletons rise up, and they start walking toward the heroes. And my brother Andrew says, "All right, I'm going to shoot my longbow at him." And I go, "Okay, I'll roll the d20," and he rolls the d20, gets a 20, and I went, "Huh." And at the time, we used a d6 to determine where on the body you were hit. And a 6 was the head, and 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 1 was a foot. And he rolls and he gets a 6. And I go, "Okay, so you get him with a critical hit in the head with the arrow. It goes right through his eye and pokes out the back of his head. And all of the skeletons drop to the ground." And I was like 40 skeletons, and you ended the battle with 1 dice roll. And that was something that he and I will talk about even to today, and that was 17 years ago. So it's stuff like that where sometimes it's just the luck in the player's favor, and what can you say? That was a fun story. I would have liked to throw a bunch of actually hit our guys with a bunch of skeletons, but it was an even more interesting story. It kind of reminded me of the Indiana Jones, where he's in the marketplace and the guy pulls out the big sword and he goes, "Wah!" And Indy just pulls out his gun and goes, and then that's the end of the fight.
Which only exists because Harrison Ford had dysentery.
Yeah, he was sick. He couldn't do the fight scene, so he was just like,
and it's the best bit in the film.
Yeah.
It's one of those moments in cinema where thank goodness that happened to Harrison Ford, because it was so much better that way. If it was some long drawn out fight scene, it wouldn't have been nearly as interesting or ironic, where it was just, holy smokes, he just took that dude down. So anyway,
it's always those moments at the gaming table. I'm going to jump into the chat now and grab the roll call. We got Acolyte 14 from Boston. We got Todd in Dallas. Dominius is in Arizona. Pokemon for what in Canada? Minnesota with Evil Siliputty. Brian F is in New York City. Paul Jamal is in Pittsburgh, California with Kirkish 001. We got Michigan in the house with Jake. Scratch Paper Games is in Beaver Dam, Wisconsin. AJ Kenny is in Lopez Island, Washington. Tesmic is in Queensland, Eastern Australia.
Nice.
I got that wrong. I thought you were in Western for some reason. Comrade 2261 is in Massachusetts. We've got the OZ in the house with Raven. Utah with Virgilio. We've got Brian F in Alberta, Canada. Fernando Q in Fernando's Modest Hut. We've got Lincoln in Sweden. Truemate is in Wales. Gelatinous Cube in Newfoundland, Canada. We've got Idaho in house with the man from the road to the farm. Missouri is Ranger Roy. We got Everett, Washington with Frigginator. So, hey, everybody, thanks for hanging out with us today. It is always awesome to have you guys in the chat and weighing in from all over the place. Last night I had one of those encounters where it wasn't really meant to be a tough encounter, but I didn't think it was going to end in the first round. One of my players had a magic item that could create a wall of thorns, and she just hit the ghouls and ghast with it, and they just were obliterated. They all failed their saving throws.
That was the Scarlet Sisterhood.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Sometimes it just works out in the right favor, or sometimes the wrong favor is if the monsters are doing really, really well. But yeah, I think that the main thing is, as long as people are having fun and you're making some really good memories with some good friends or even some new friends, then you're doing everything right. I think that when we get too attached to certain rules and it slow down the game, it starts to suffer. So, my main method is just have fun, tell a good story.
And that's exactly it. And I analyze it from case to case basis. I was like, well, would it be more fun if I have these monsters survive and attack my players? Will it matter? And at that moment, I decided not really. They used a major resource. They had a magic item that allowed them to do that once a week. So I was like, you know what? I'll let them feel good about it. You know, take those monsters off the playing field. Well, later that same game, they're getting their asses kind of handed to them by a bunch of Sue monsters and an evil warlock. You know, and you know they managed to nearly kill the warlock, but he escapes. And they killed like 25% of the Sue monsters, but they weren't doing great. Like 2 of them were injured pretty good. One of them was stunned and didn't show any signs of breaking free of the stun anytime soon. So I just had the rest of the Sue monsters flee, not because I really care about like preserving my players and their characters per se, but because I said, well, what would these monsters really do? Would they keep fighting after their numbers have been depleted and their master has, you know, fled the field? You know, what do they have to gain from it?
Well, and that's a good point. Often I use a D12 to roll for attitude or morality, and I usually give it some sort of 3 and lower, and the whoever will flee, you know, monsters, bandits, whatever. 10 and above, then they'll charge, and somewhere in the middle they'll hold their ground. So like 4 to 8, they'll hold their ground. So that can definitely help my games when I'm trying to determine, you know, what they're going to do. And then obviously I'll change the scale a little bit and say, well, actually 6 or below, they'll flee because their leader just got killed. So, you know, that can definitely help out. And then only on a 12 will they charge the rest of the players. So that helps me to make it a little bit more random and try to just give it odds instead of my personal opinion. If I need that, sometimes I know exactly what they'll do. They're going to flee. They're a bunch of goblins. They're not going to, you know, want to stick around for this. So, you know, but other times it's maybe hobgoblins and they're thinking tactically. They're going, okay, let's do a tactical retreat instead of fighting these guys because obviously they're more of a match than we thought they were. We'll rally and then go after them again later. So, you know, that's the way I do it with a D12.
Some old school morale rolls.
Pretty much, yeah. I was taught that by my uncle. He was one who introduced us to D&D, and he was old school. So I think that that was brought over from some edition. I don't know. It's been a long time since I read my AD&D books that he gave me. So, yeah.
But no, it definitely works. And like you said, if you want to add a bit of randomness into it, you can make that die roll. And, you know, that's definitely something, I guess, if I were to do, I'd probably roll it in open for them to see like what's going to happen. I just like that aspect. You know, it's the grognard in me, I guess.
Yeah, rolling openly is something that I do pretty often. Sometimes I roll behind the screen. You know, it's funny too because people who play with me enough will catch on to it and go, well, he's rolling behind the screen. What does that mean? And a lot of times they'll be saying stuff like, you know, always rolling behind the screen. That means all the numbers are made up. And oftentimes I'll roll and then I'll pick the screen up and I'll show that, no, in fact, it was a 20 or whatever. And but a lot of times I have stuff behind the screen like miniatures I don't want them to see. And so just for convenience, I'll be back there, you know, assembling my troops and I'll be rolling next to them. Whereas when I don't need miniatures or all the miniatures are on the field, I'll just come out and I'll be walking around the table as I'm rolling and telling the story. And I do, you know, I'm acting stuff out and I'm, you know, getting really animated and stuff. So people tend to get a bit more out of my games than they would if I was just sitting there the entire time. I don't know, Ralph, you tell me if you like that style or not.
Well, this is why one of the reasons I like the game so much is that there isn't a wrong way to play it. There's only a right and wrong way to play it as far as your group is concerned. You know, you can't say it is definitively the best way to play like this. It might be the best way to play for your group. And yeah, it's because, well, I mean, like you love having the battle maps. You know, you were, and I can see how that would be really, really good. But I can't get past the fact that for me, Theatre of the Mind is just such a good way to play. Yeah, I just always find it very interesting, the different ways people have of playing.
Well, the Theatre of the Mind method is so great because you don't need any miniatures, you don't need any maps, any sort.
Oh yeah, for a cheapskate like me, perfect.
Yeah, well, so as many of you can see here, I mean, here's maybe 1/5 of my entire collection of miniatures right here on the shelf, and those are just the big ones that I don't really use that often. I have boxes and boxes and boxes, all very organized totes, and every single tote has inside of it all of these plastic bags, each with their own type of creature in them. So all the orcs are here, and all the goblins are here, and all that. So I've got hundreds.
Carry those for game nights.
Yes, I've got hundreds of miniatures that I use, and that's why I say about the map printing, ability. I would love to have that ability because I like to play on the maps from the adventure. Like if you go to Mike Schley's website, it's a Zenfolio website. You can get all of the maps for the various WotC adventures. I like to play with miniatures on the maps, give a very good visual representation and a spatial relationship to everything, so that the players can take that and really internalize it and understand just how far away they are from this and what they can see and all that. So that's how I like to play. But your method of Theatre of the Mind was fantastic, and we all sat around on sofas and talked about what we wanted to do, and we rolled a few dice, and all in all, we all had a great time, and it was one of the most memorable adventures I've ever had.
In a way, it's kind of an extension of the rolling the dice behind the screen all the time. I can completely make up what those dice are saying, and I can also completely make up the environment. If you need a thing next to you to do the cool thing that you want to do, yeah, it's there. I've not got a map telling me that it's not there. So yes, you do have the release rope for the chandelier, and it happens to be within a move of you.
You need a cool DM to make it better. I found like our early switch to less Theatre of Mind and more tactical was because we were tired of the wizard getting smashed by the ogre, even though he's in the back of the party.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. It definitely does allow you to lie.
And everyone else is like, well, how does that happen? So our early, and we still kind of do this. It's like Theatre of the Mind for everything, but when actual combat breaks out, just because it's easier to just look and see where things are. But the early days, it was D6s and for the monsters, and D4s for the heroes, and we would use pencils or Kit Kats or whatever for the terrain. And it was very rough. It wasn't until 3rd edition came out pre-painted minis that we started using minis.
Yeah, well, what I did when I started playing with 4th edition, where you needed the grid and everything, I just got a load of little gemstones and things.
Yeah.
Which I thought, and they can be various things, and it's you could maybe think that that's how you'd do battle tactics if you were planning a war in the strategy tent. Maybe you would just use these stones to go around saying
little pebbles and stuff. Well, oftentimes I'll use D6s. I ended up getting some really big D6s from Chessex, and they're a bit bigger than the normal D6. So the D6, there's the normal D6, in the polyhedral set, and there's the bigger one, and I just use these as monster tokens sometimes. And I look at Ralph, he's got his pipe and everything, but I just set them to a numeric value, and I have up to 6 monsters basically, and I have number 1 through 6 if I have that many monsters, and that way I can keep track of things, and they can say I run up to orc number 1, orc number 3, orc number 4, and that can be very handy for me. Or just simply monster number 3, and I go, oh yeah, that's one of the goblins. There you go. There's the gemstones, Yeah, that's a great way of doing it.
But
so
then
blue
also
gemstones
they
are
kind of
these.
be color coded. So these matte black ones would always be the big tough guys. They'd be the big orc bruiser or the human with the big axe. They'd always be the tough ones. The green ones would always be the ones that look a bit sneaky. The brown ones would always be, so they're kind of. That was going to be a huge monster at some point. It's a trilobite.
Trilobite, nice.
Sorry.
Well, and the gemstones are really badass too, because you can put those into a little leather pouch and hand that out to somebody as an item. I used to. There you go. Exactly. So I used to have props and all kinds of stuff in our games, and that was one of them, is to put cool things or rings and that kind of stuff into, there you go, little owl figurine. So you put that into a leather pouch and you say, this is what you find, and now the whole group is interested. Is that a tooth?
That's one of my teeth.
Oh geez.
Sorry, this is a pouch full of tat.
Just junk. So junk. Yeah, having, whatever, tats. So having some sort of props, that's definitely cool to be throwing out there on the table. And however you represent your monsters, however you represent your props and stuff, I mean, it's all good. And even if
another thing that you did with dice, which I thought was quite good, was you didn't track monster hit points. You delegated that to the players, and you would put 2d10s on the table, and those would count up how much damage the monster had taken.
Yes.
So you weren't telling players how many hit points they had, but you were telling them how much damage they had taken.
Yes, exactly, because that way it's an unknown, because you don't know certain things necessarily, like how much hit point regeneration they have, but taking a D100 basically and putting it next to the monster in question, next to its miniature, then letting the players continuously turn that up. A, you're relieving yourself from a certain amount of work, which makes your job a lot easier, and B, they can see how much damage it's taken, basically because you're watching this monster go from being not cut up and bloody to cut up and bloody or smashed or whatever. And so it's a visual representation. Oh man, he's taking a lot of damage. He's up to 94 damage he's taken. Isn't that thing like, oh yeah, he's looking pretty bad now. So, or he's taking 94 damage and you're like, he doesn't look like he's hardly taking any damage at all. And then they're like, oh no, he's resistant or whatever. So
run out of dice.
Yeah.
When you get close to 100, you just 100 and set it next to it.
Well, what I do is I just put a D6 there and I put it to a 1, so they can go 100 and 44 or whatever. So you use 3 dice to represent more than 100. But yeah, lots of little tricks.
I promise this monster has no more than 600 or 700 hit points. After that, no more maximum. Well, we were over the hour mark. And
okay.
I have another meeting to get to after this, so we're gonna have to cut you off.
Well, we appreciate the hangout and the promoting of Artifices of Core Soil Tower. Just want to say one more time, we are ending on Tuesday the 3rd at 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We are hoping to achieve our final stretch goal at $10,000. Right now, we're at $7,590 with 561 backers. So thank you all for your pledges. This is a fantastic project, and we hope that everyone spreads the word and we get as many people involved as possible.
Yeah, and you guys can find the links to the Kickstarter as well as Nord Games in the description below, as always. And with that, until next time, guys, stay nerdy.
Later.